Hello, marry me. So I want to discuss a religious topic, and it is about taking the Bible as literal truth. Now, I have nothing against Christianity, though I'm not a Christian myself. Know a lot of people. One of my best friends are Christian. My favorite teacher in school is a Christian. Hi, you know who you are. And um, my hubby is agnostic Christian. I deeply respect Christianity, and also Jehovah is one of the deities that I at times work with, of course, from the framework of being pagan. So, yeah, often I find myself caught a little bit between Christians and atheists, because at one point I feel like I want to defend Christianity. On the other hand, some Christians have a tendency to attack my religion as well, or attack homosexuals, and so on and so forth. And I see that a lot of the problems with Christianity, and there's a lot of great things with it as well, amazing things with Christianity, but a lot of the things that are a problem with Christianity is when you accept the Bible as the ultimate, single, perfect truth that is completely literal. Now, again, I don't dislike the Bible. I have several Bibles in my bookshelves, and I think it is an amazing book that has so many great life lessons. However, I feel that when you take it completely literally, that only really gives atheists ammunition to use against anyone who's religious. Because there's a few things you have to remember before you take this book literally. One thing is that it wasn't like a lot of people say it's the word of God. Yeah, but it wasn't like the book just manifested into existence by God's will. It was written by human beings. Now, of course, you can say that they were divinely inspired, and that's quite possible. A lot of the information in the Bible is quite surprising that people had access to at that time. For example, there is a section in the Bible that says you should not eat yeast. I think that's the name of it. And just now, science has starting to figure out that it might not be good for us. So, yeah. But the problem is that the various texts were written by various people, and there was a lot more texts than what actually made it into the various Bibles that the various traditions of Christianity use today. And yes, the various groupings, Protestant, Catholic, the Orthodox faiths, and so on and so forth, use different texts. So, what about the text that wasn't included? Has everybody who has ever been involved with developing the Bible been divinely inspired? That's the question. It isn't really a question about whatever or not the guys that wrote the text were divinely inspired. That's quite possible, but has everybody who has ever selected a text for the current Bible, who has ever translated it, who has ever done anything with it, have all of they been divinely inspired? So, yeah. And you also have to remember that, for example, for the New Testament, they, they a lot of people seem to think that the apostles walked around and they wrote down what happened as they traveled with Jesus. But that wasn't what happened. The texts were written down many decades, sometimes centuries, after the fact. And really, how accurate is something that's been written down so long after it happened? Also, one thing you have to remember by how ancient people wrote things, that they didn't necessarily write what had actually literally happened, because they wrote in metaphors, they wrote to illustrate things. Let's say I have a friend named Joe. Now, one of Joe's main characteristics is that he's very fond of and very kind to animals. Now, if I'm gonna write about Joe, I might not just write Joe is fond of animals. If I were a writer in biblical times, I would probably write something like this. One day, Joe walked down the street, and there was a terrible storm, and wet rain poured from the heavens. Suddenly, Joe hears this little peep, and he looks down and sees a poor little starved dog. So Joe takes the clothes off his own back to wrap the dog in, and takes the dog to the nearest baker where he spends his last coin to buy bread for the dog. And then he finally returns home. Joe has a terrible cold, but he has managed to save the little dog. Now, will the story about the little dog necessarily have happened? No, because that wasn't what was important. That story illustrates how I see Joe. It illustrates me seeing Yo as somebody who would sacrifice his own health to save an animal. Writing something down, it wasn't so important that it was a factual truth. What was important was that it illustrated the point. Also, another thing that a lot of Christians doesn't seem to get in basically get is that the development of the current Bible was pretty political. You see, the Emperor Constantine, he decided he needed a religion. You see, after the time of Jesus, there was a lot of different groups that had different texts that believed different things about this figure. But Constantine decided that now I need a state religion because that will unify the people and it effectively speaking make the people easier to control. So he went to the most dominant group and he said, sit down and make me a Bible. And that group then went down, sat down and selected all the various texts that would become the Bible. Were all of them divinely inspired? Also, another thing you have to remember is that people have written from the uh, from the way they saw the world at that point in time. So that, for example, let's take the story of the flood. There's been a lot of archaeological evidence that show that there were a great flood in the area where most of the Bible stories happened. There has been one can see that on several Egyptian landmarks, among other things. Did that encompass the entire world? So there was only this dude, his family, and two of every animal that survived? No. But I can imagine that if you lived through that and you had the understanding of somebody living in ancient times, it would seem like the world was ending. This doesn't make the Bible untrue, but it does mean that when you're taking the words of somebody who lived thousands of years ago, with the understanding of the world they had thousands of years ago, and you try to translate it into complete, utter, literal truth, that's when the problem starts. So, I mean, some people will be insulted by what I'm saying here, and I'm sorry about that. It's just basically my opinion. I think that when you read the Bible and take it completely literally, it is it's a little bit like when you read statistics and you don't put any context with it, or you just see the statistics as complete utter truth without seeing anything around it. For example, If you look at statistics, men have a greater chance of being good with math than women. However, there are women that are amazing at math. The youngest math professor in the world is a woman, for example. However, if you only look at the statistics, you would say, no, women is poor at math, men are good at math. And it becomes the same thing if you read the Bible completely literally. Yes, there was a seven-headed dragon. Yes, there was this city where they decided to rape angels and God turned everybody there into salt. If you believe in all of these stories completely literally, then that is a bit the same as reading statistics that way. I believe there is a lot of truths in the Bible, and I believe that one can learn a lot from the Bible. However, one have to, if one just say that no, it's the ultimate truth, everything in here is true, then problem is that it's a pretty big leap to say that everybody who has ever been involved with the Bible's production has been divinely inspired. Even if you believe that the guys that wrote the Bible were divinely inspired, that's quite a leap. And it also completely disregards what we archaeologically know about how texts were written at the time. Also, there's a translation issue. The first Bibles were written in Hebrew. Now, Hebrew is a very complex language, and religious texts generally also have written with a lot of symbology that have to do with numbers, the placement of words, what number of word were placed in the text, the numbers of the various letters, and so on and so forth. Just by this, you have 22 completely different interpretations of the first paragraph in the Bible alone. Now, the problem was that they wanted to translate the Bible into Latin. Latin doesn't have these complex symbology that Hebrew has, so they sat down and discussed for a long time how the hell are we going to do this. And then one person came up with a very brilliant solution. He said, no, it'll be alright. We just find the closest translation that we can come up with, and then we just cut the difference by writing, every time we write the word God, we write it in gold. Yeah, that will solve the issue, clearly. And the problem is, for example, there's a lot of discussion about evolution, right? Yes, creation. I don't see that there should be a problem there, because really what it says is that God created the world in 7 cycles. So the cycles can be anything. Cycles can be translated into days, yes, but it can also be centuries, millennia, billions of years, ages. And here's the problem. It is a little bit like when you translate some anime titles. Let me just find an example there, because I have a good one in mind. Let me see. Yes, here we are. There is an anime series named Higurashi. Now, Higurashi is translated into When They Cry. Now, can Higurashi be translated into When They Cry? Yes, it's a possible translation. However, it can also mean so much more. For example, in the series is about basically a dark Groundhog Day thing, where everything starts happy, 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 and then one person goes insane and kills all the others because there's a supernatural entity that causes it, and the main character has to find a way to create the perfect day, basically, in the perfect cycle. where nobody dies. Anyway, it can also mean when the good times end, which is a more fitting title, or it can also mean you see the name of the main character translates into Cyrus's, so that it can also be translated into when the Cyruses cry, which, but yeah, as you see, when you translate something from one language to another, often a lot of meaning gets lost, and it's the same thing with the Bible. There's a lot of things that is in the Hebrew or even in the Latin Bibles that has not translated well into other languages. And herein lies a lot of the problems. Uh, it doesn't necessarily say originally in the Bible that it was literally 7 days that God created the world with. It is 7 cycles. But cycles can mean anything. So, yeah, I respect Christianity tremendously. However, I do have a problem when you interpret the Bible completely literally, because there's so much evidence and so much knowledge that say that taking it completely literally doesn't work. That doesn't mean there isn't a God. That doesn't mean that Jesus didn't have a divine nature. It might mean that some of the things that a lot of Bible thumpers, have a tendency to preach on might not be correct because they're taking it too literally. So yeah, that's, I guess, is what I wanted with the video. Just saying that there's a lot of knowledge in the Bible. However, there's really no indication that it should be taken completely literally. Does that mean that all of it is metaphors? No, not necessarily. However, there's a mix of it. It's a mix of the stories being written long after the events happen, of translations not necessarily working perfectly, of metaphors, of how things were written back then. There's so many factors that indicate that this is a text that you might get more spiritual knowledge out of if you try to interpret it for yourself instead of just going with the literal. It says there was a 700 dragon, clearly there was a 700 dragon. Now, as a fantasy fan, I would love that there be a 700 dragon. I'm not protesting the dragons. I'm just saying the Bible is probably not intended to be taken completely and utterly literally. And I do think Christianity would be able to work a lot better with other people, with other religions, if they try to follow the spirit of the Bible instead of trying to thump it as literal truth. So yeah, that is what I wanted to say. Have a great day, and blessed be.